Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm Aisha, and this is my new podcast series called Coffee Chats with Aisha. Essentially, I'm doing a bunch of different virtual coffee chats, or maybe some in person, with Muslim women professionals who are absolutely killing it in the current industries that they're in. This is the first episode where I'm talking to a special guest who you'll be introduced to in a second, who's become her own CEO. She's killing it in the retail and fashion industry and has just found the ability to curate a creative outlet for herself. Stay tuned. And in today's episode, which is the first ever episode, listeners will be taking away reflections on starting a brand, finding healthy balances and boundaries through business challenges, and actually becoming your own boss. So really, I'm learning as I go when I do these conversations with Muslim women, and I really do hope that you take away lessons learned as well. Today's episode, I'll be featuring really a good friend of mine who has been killing it in the work that she's done, Hala Khalifeh. Hey, assalamu alaikum, how are you?
Good, alhamdulillah. How are you?
Good, alhamdulillah. Thank you so much for making the time to chat with me. I know I'm really excited about it, and I hope you are too. Fun fact, you guys, I copied her, but we have matcha today.
Yes, we do. I made myself a little matcha lemonade.
Oh my God, amazing. Okay, not gonna lie, my sister made this. So it's a matcha latte, but lychee flavored, or like she put lychee syrup in there. So I'm excited to kind of be sipping. If it makes noises, guys, I'm so sorry, but I need to stay hydrated.
You'll hear our little gulps, our little swallows.
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm sure you will. It's going to be fun. All right. So before we jump into it, of course, I want to introduce our lovely guest here today who's sharing about her experiences, about everything brand oriented, challenges, and just becoming her own CEO. Who is Hala, you might be wondering? Always a creative at heart, the type of girl whose school projects were annoyingly artsy and who would randomly rearrange her bedroom at 3 a.m. to feel something new. Hala majored in journalism at USC. She's a young entrepreneur and a small business owner. She graduated from the University of Southern California with a Bachelor of Arts degree in journalism and a minor in Arabic. During her time in college, she worked her way up to the newsroom as a radio host, reporter, and section editor. And then after graduating, she expanded her small business, which that'll be the bulk of today's discussion because she made it full time. Halaballoo is a woman-owned small business that is run by Hala herself. Essentially, it is a place where they craft meaningful pieces with every stitch. She'll talk more about what Halaballoo is. I don't want to speak on her behalf, but Hala also now works as a freelance writer and a full-time business owner. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hala, how are you?
Walaikum assalam. Good, thank you. Wow, what a description. It feels so weird, like hearing someone else say everything you did. I'm like, I did that. That is so right. Like I went through that.
Yes, dude, you absolutely killed it. And I know I wasn't around for much of it because the pandemic happened, but I was watching you online when I was on social media, and when I wasn't, I was still keeping up with you because you've been absolutely killing the game. And guys, I am sporting Halaballoo. All of her links, everything that you need to know in terms of connecting with her or buying from her own company will be linked down below. So go take a look. She's awesome.
And actually, something about the hoodie that you're wearing right now was part of the reason that I kind of got big and then was able to go full time. So we'll get into that a little later, but it's so crazy that this is so full circle because here you are wearing the hoodie that went viral. And then I don't know, it's crazy.
No, subhanAllah, like I said, I was assuming you might get to it. So I'm excited for you to share that part of your journey in terms just of virality. That's all I'll say for now. But opening question, and this is kind of silly, but this is how I'm going to open all these coffee chats because I think it's on brand. Do you like coffee? Like, are you a coffee gal? And what is your like any specific coffee order?
So, okay, I do, but I treat it like it's a dangerous slope for me. I see what like coffee addictions have done to other people, and like they have withdrawals, they get headaches, they can't like live without it. And like, I do not want to do that to myself. So I tread lightly. I don't rely on it too much, but like here and there, a sweet little treat. It's not like something that I need, but it's like I have it few enough times where it feels special and like it actually gets me motivated to do work and stuff. So I'm keeping it like that for now, where I'm not dependent on it, but it's like a fun little thing for me.
No, that's awesome. I think like, I know people have like, I know so many girlies who have coffee in their routine where like it's so well curated. I feel like coffee is such a fun hobby or interest to have. It just couldn't be me. I will go venture into a cafe, and if I'm like socially working or if I'm hanging out with people, yeah, I'll order a latte. I'm pretty basic. The vanilla latte is good enough for me. But no, coffee also is not necessarily part of my routine. So I feel you wholeheartedly on that. All right. So basically, let's jump into what I think everyone is trying to wonder about. What is Halaballoo?
Yeah. So in its most simplistic form, Halaballoo is a small business, and I specialize in design work and custom embroidery. So that's what Halaballoo is in a nutshell. But to me, it's honestly so much more than that. It's truly just a space for representation, ideas, and embroidery to collide, mostly through the crafting of wearable art. And I say that specifically because each design that I work on is so personal, so individualized, and honestly just so custom to each person that it truly does feel like art. And I think that's what sets my business apart from mass-produced clothing lines and, fast fashion and other places, because there's truly so much love and thought that is put into each design, that it feels like a piece of art. Like here I am wearing, this piece, and I don't feel like it's just like a sweatshirt, but a piece of art. So that's kind of what it is. And kind of going off of that as well, you can hear it in the word. So the name Halaballoo the word is an actual word. I spell it differently. I spelled it to kind of reflect my name. My name is Hala, and so it's in the word. But the actual word Halaballoo means, let me pull up the definition right now, because I use it in a different form that sometimes I actually forget that it's a real word.
Wait, I actually had no idea. Maybe I just never, I search it up because I'll find your website, but I didn't know it was an actual word. So yes, please educate us.
So yeah, here's your little dictionary term of the day. Halaballoo is an actual word, and it means a lot of noise or fuss. So it's not necessarily a positive or a negative thing. It's just a lot of something. And I picked the name, honestly, one, because it had my name in it and I thought it was kind of fun and cute. The main reason I picked it, though, and I think it's so reflective of what I do now, is it quite honestly means a lot and nothing at all. So to me, it was a word that wouldn't restrict me and wouldn't pigeonhole me into doing one thing or another, regardless of where my passions grow, where my interests grow, where the business is kind of going. And that's a perfect example is I started off Halaballoo as just designing and selling stickers. And I do not even advertise that I do stickers anymore. I mean, my main thing is custom embroidery, which has nothing to do with stickers. And having that name, something as simple as a name decision, allowed me to grow into anything, whether later I go into more graphic design or interior design or a lifestyle brand or a magazine. Like Halaballoo is everything and nothing all at the same time, where I can kind of go into anything. So I feel like that's a perfect reflection of what my business is more than just being embroidery. It's truly just a space that can transcend, different platforms and environments to really just bring representation and ideas together.
Gosh, I love that. I mean, really so beautiful. And like I said, I'm learning as well. I mean, I've watched you from afar and grow this thing into something that is so beautiful, and learning about this facet of just even the name change or the name like selection being so carefully thought out in terms of just representing everything and nothing, like you said. I mean, it's so funny you say that. Every time someone asks me as a joke, like, oh, like what's wrong with you? I say, everything and nothing. Like it's, everything and nothing. I love it. Well, walk me through your decision. I mean, and we're going to get through just specifically the ups and downs and just like what Halaballoo means to you and how you've gone through navigating it. But from a large picture standpoint, can you walk me through your decision to go full time, whether that's pros, cons, concerns, or just, I mean, how did you do it? All of us are wondering in terms of monetizing skill sets, right? Like in this world of content creation and creator economy, how did you go about making what you love full time?
Yeah, absolutely. I will say it's a scary decision to make, and it's a decision that only you can truly make yourself. And I think that's because it's not a traditional path. You know, I went through school and I got a degree and I went through all of that. And for all I knew, I was going to follow that generally traditional career trajectory where, you know, you graduate and then that's when you're kind of career wise at your prime and you're most marketable to other companies to apply for jobs, especially with a major like journalism, which is what I studied. And, you know, at a great school like USC, like, you're most marketable as an individual and as a reporter to be able to get jobs like that. So I will start off by saying it was scary because no one else had paved that path and no one else was going to do it until I jumped into it. Kind of going with that in mind, the bigger picture reason that I decided to do it was truly just a leap of faith. I told myself and maybe this is kind of this statement comes from a place of privilege and maybe it's naive, but assuming I live a decently long life, inshallah, and assuming I still have, you know, a future, I'm pretty young. You know, we're all kind of, you know, we have, inshallah, a long way to go. And I kind of thought about it just very positively, where I was like, if there is any time to mess up, it's now. If there's any time to feel like this isn't for you, it's now. Like, and I think that's a scary thing to admit or you realize, and maybe it's too hopeful, but I feel like I've always kind of been that way where I'm like, let me just try it. And like, my biggest fear is later on looking back and feeling like I didn't reach my potential or just wondering what if. And this was a big what if in my head. Is I kind of saw myself 20, 30, 40 years in the future being like, you know, what if I did take my passion for art and creativity into something more? So that's kind of where that came from. You know, I graduated and I was in line to be applying to jobs. And for a while I did job hunt. It kind of was during an odd time though, with COVID and the pandemic and everything. The world was crazy in its own. So a lot was going on with that anyway, but a huge reason that I just kind of went for the jump too is I realized I am so picky about my work environment and where I work and who I work with. And nothing was quite filling my cup. And look, I know you have to take baby steps. And I know every parent out there, including my parents, were like, you have to take baby steps. You're not going to get your dream job right away. You have to like work for it. And I'm like, I know, but my time is so valuable. Like, I just want to, I don't care if it's not my dream job yet, but I'm like, I want to work with people that kind of have the same goals or like not experiences, but like who I can learn from. And in a field like journalism, I wasn't finding what I was looking for. And so all that to say, I was like, hold up, let me do something crazy. What if I create my own job for me? And again, that's like such a privileged idea to even be able to have. But alhamdulillah, I was equipped with the hope, honestly, that's a big one, but also the resources and space and time to be able to explore that. So that's kind of how I started it. And it was really scary. And there was a lot of doubt with it too. You know, I was wondering, was it a waste that I went to college? Was it a waste? Is my journalism degree a waste? Truth is no, like these are all skills that are building up for me and they're just more to my pocket. Like, and I never just want to be one thing. I continue journalism in my full-time job, as a small business owner in so many ways that aren't traditionally storytelling or reporting. So there's a lot that went into it, but I honestly just took a leap of faith with it.
No, that's awesome. I mean, you're always told, or I've always heard the concept of a what if, right? In terms of, if not now, when? Because I mean, and that's just generally the mindset when it comes to habit, like making things a habit or a routine in terms of establishing something part of what you want to get done. I mean, like me in the gym, like if I kept telling myself I'm going tomorrow, tomorrow's never promised. And then B, like, that mindset is just going to keep being cyclical. Like, unless you do it now, like, when are you going to do it? And then will you have the opportunity to do so later? Because you never know. Nothing is promised in that sense. And to your point about hope, I think that's where Muslims have that advantage of really just recognizing that whatever is meant for you in terms of, right, we're hoping for the best. It'll happen. But you do have to tie your camel. You do have to tie your camel and commit to taking advantage of the resources that are presented to you, and then just taking initiative, and then just really leaving the rest up to Allah. Like, that's right. You're trusting, you're having full tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you are being your own boss in terms of getting stuff done. And I think that's the biggest difference in terms of just like mindset building for something as in this regard of taking a risk, and just, you never know what's going to happen, but you miss every shot you don't even take at the beginning.
Exactly.
No, that's awesome. You kind of spoke to this a little bit, but were there any specific motivations that just actually pushed you to taking that step of trying to open up your own business or going full time?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a couple of things. Some of them were more tangible, like actual occurrences that happen, including the design of the hoodie that you're wearing right now, which I'll get into. And then others were just more mindsets. And one of the main mindsets that had really occurred to me was I had read something that said something along the lines of, the biggest thief of good ideas is too much time. And I realized I was given this idea of, growing a brand, or, I was instilled with this hope, excitement, passion for whatever Halaballoo was going to be at the time. And I kind of knew at that time that if too much time had gone by, it would be the passion and excitement and drive for me to actually make it happen would have been stripped away of me. And that's a result of, I think, too much buildup of self-fear, self-doubt, and just questioning. So I kind of knew, I was like, let me just jump in head first before I give myself too many reasons not to do it, too many excuses before life gets even crazier than it is. So that was kind of the biggest mindset shift that happened with me. And I was just really curious. I'm always thinking about how things are going to play out. And I think the uncertainty was kind of what was really exciting to me, is to this day, I have no idea where I'm going to be in a month or 5 years, or, how it's going to grow. But that's kind of the fun of it. You're always, kept on your toes. And then there were other things too, I was motivated by the fact that I couldn't find jobs that actually appealed to me. But maybe that was also kind of my excuse. Maybe I was being too picky for a reason. I'm sure if I looked hard enough, I could find a job, but maybe in the back of my head, I kind of wanted to tell myself, okay, I tried, I looked, I didn't find anything. Let's start that business you wanted to start. And then, actual things like going back finally to the hoodie that you're wearing right now, that design, yes, that design to this day is still one of the most popular ones. And for people who don't know or can't see right now, it's their birth flowers. So each month of the year has a birth flower, which is crazy. I never knew that. So, January is a certain month. I think June is like a rose, stuff like that. And then Aisha had the idea of writing our names, writing her name.
It's like a friendship. The idea was with three of my friends, my besties, have this hoodie, and it's just a friendship hoodie, I suppose. So names and then flowers. Yes. But yeah, go for it. I mean, it's so exciting as to what happened generally for you.
Yeah. So it's a super cute, very sentimental, very personal design. And I think I just filmed the process of it real quick one morning, and I put it on TikTok, and that was that. And then literally a couple hours later, it blew up. And I remember feeling overwhelmed. I was like, oh my God, what now? I was like, what's the rule for this? What parameters, what steps do we take now? There's no protocol for this. My head was rambling. I was like, okay, what now? And because it's such a custom design too, like everyone in the comments, I woke up to over 400 messages in that one night of people being like, I want
Crazy.
this.
Yeah.
So that kind of skyrocketed. And yeah, that I would say is like the main tangible event that pushed me to actually believe that it could be full time. Because at that time, I think I was only into Halaballoo for 1 year. I was still in school. I had one more year of school left. I believe that was the timeline. And going full time wasn't even in my thought process at that time. And I feel like when it went viral, it kind of gave me reassurance that like, whoa, wait, people actually like what I do. My art is different and people appreciate it. And maybe I'm doing this for more than just me. I think that was when it clicked that people actually appreciated it. And I was like, maybe I could do something more with this. So that kind of streamlined like the rest of my passion and curiosity and interest in it, to kind of motivate me to at least start thinking about it. Because that occurrence and that night that it went viral happened at least a year and a half before I actually officially made the decision to go full time. So, but I think it's like these little like seeds that were planted here and there that were kind of like making me start to think about going full time. And then they all blossomed one day or 1 month where I was like, oh my God, this all connects. This all makes sense. Let's go full time.
Yeah. Gosh, I mean, that's so awesome. It's so crazy to like be wearing this hoodie and like know just like the TikTok behind it all. And I don't know, so crazy. Hopefully I've already played the TikTok while we've been speaking. So you kind of like, picture what she's talking about here, but that's so awesome. I'm like, literally I geek out every time I see any sort of like thing on like the only social media I'm on is LinkedIn technically. And every time I see you share just like a highlight or a win, it's so heartwarming to see Halaballoo in different places. And so speaking of just like being the manager, right? Managing a business, what would you say are important skill sets that one needs to have to manage a business, and whether those are skills that you had already that you recognize that you developed or strengthened, or new skills you hadn't even thought of that you've now sort of absorbed into managing the business?
Yeah. I think the number one thing is just passion. And I know that's so cheesy, like, okay, passion, you have to be excited about what you do. But truth is, like, realistically, if you don't care about it, no one else will. If you don't care about it enough to grow it and tell people what they're missing out on and to show people your excitement, no one else is going to do the work for you. Like, I feel like, so it starts off with that. And that's not always easy to keep though. Like, it definitely comes in waves, and it's, as humans, with or without a small business, we deal with self-doubt. We deal with issues of feeling connected, imposter syndrome, feeling like we're not good enough, comparing. That is being human. And so when you add a small business to it as well, you're adding another element, and it feels even scarier because when you do it full time, and if that's your main source of income, it also is like, it's that much deeper where you're like, oh my God, wait, I actually do have to, continue this and like go well with it, or, continue growing it. And if you're not growing it, no one else is going to be doing it for you, essentially. So I think another one is discipline, and that goes in both ways. That can go, some days I will be on fire and I will be working through 3 a.m. And that's not healthy though. I'm not advertising for that. So I'm saying discipline to not do that actually, because that leads to burnout, and we'll get into that too. But discipline goes both ways. I feel like the most obvious way is, discipline to actually do the work, right? Like if you're not working a traditional job, you also have to be clocking in. Don't give yourself every single day off. Don't slack off, But then also it goes the opposite way too. And I find that the opposite way is actually harder to overcome, where you feel like you can do it all. And sometimes you're feeling great about it. And you're like, I am on fire. I can finish, 50 orders today. I'll work on these designs. And then I post this, and I responded to all my messages, but then all fall, So I think discipline is a huge one. You have to be good at multitasking. I think like there's always a billion different things going on, because at the end of the day, as a small business owner, especially if you are a one-man show, one woman show, one female show, um, you are everything for your everything. And you're the fulfillment distributor, you're the marketing advertiser, you're the packaging assistant, you're the CEO, you're the founder, the customer service representative. You are everything for your everything. And so you really have to, I think, be able to balance that. And of course, the ultimate goal eventually would be to grow that and to be able to hire people, or outsource certain tasks to kind of mitigate that. But I think that's a big one, and that goes hand in hand with organization as well. How do you stay organized? What works for you? I used to have a notebook of all of my tasks and, just like chicken scratch, handwriting and random doodles and stuff. And it's so cool to look at. It honestly feels like an archive. If I die one day, have it in a museum. It like
noted.
When I die one day. Yeah. Also, I like that I said, if I die one day, I know that I will be dying. So when it happens, anyway, but finding that didn't work for me and switching to a different platform. So it's a lot of learning and growth, and honestly, just patience. So I think the three main things I would say: patience, passion, and discipline. Yeah.
Awesome. I love that.
And actually, sorry, real quick, I remember a question that you asked prior as well, I think I skipped over it too, were like the steps that I took to actually make it full time.
Yeah.
And yeah, to add to that, I feel like a lot of what I'm talking about right now is very like hippy dippy, like, okay, great, hope, passion, cool. Now, but like, tell me actual stuff. And I feel like one tangible thing that I did for that, to kind of force myself to be a little more realistic, the day that I decided to go full time, I mean, that wasn't an overnight decision, but when I finally decided to, I told myself I was going to give myself 3 months to give it my all, go full time, do everything in my power to just see where it goes. And I was going into it with no expectations for myself or the business, just to kind of see, is it realistic for myself? Does it fulfill me as much as I think it will? Is it being received as much as I want it to? And honestly, is it realistic financially too? Like, is it worth the amount of work that's being put into it? And I will say I cheated, because the 3-month mark came and I was like, I don't know, which is crazy to admit, because 3-month mark came and I honestly felt defeated. I put in my all for 3 months. I worked nonstop and I saw the finish line of 3 months. And then that time came and I went to look at my goals and if I had reached them and everything. And I was like, I don't know. So what ended up happening is there was still something in me. There was still like a bit of spark and curiosity about it, where I was like, oh, just try a little bit longer. And I know that wasn't my original plan. And I truly don't know what brought me to that decision, but I ended up pushing forward for, I would say, another month. So it was 4 months that I decided to try this out for. And subhanAllah, that is when it kicked off. Like I still can't describe it. And it's so surreal thinking about it, because the 3-month mark, if I had followed what I originally said, I would have closed that book and, I don't know, found another job or just did this part-time or closed it entirely. But something in me told me to continue for 1 more month. And that is truly when everything that I had been doing for those past 90 days actually felt like it was paying off. And it's just so crazy, because I feel like sometimes you feel like there's something in you that's, you get a sign or you feel a calling and you continue. Something's telling you when all odds are against you and everyone else is like, maybe it's not realistic, and you continue doing it and it really pays off. So subhanAllah, honestly, I'm just so grateful that I continued for that 4th month to see what happens, because here I am 3 years later, continuing to do what I was doing. And if I had stopped too soon, who knows, what would have happened with that.
No, that's awesome. I mean, I think generally like setting deadlines for yourself, just accountability is increased thereafter, that you are fully committing to something and then just like evaluating. And I'm really glad that something whatever it was, right? Gut instinct or, guidance from Allah to just keep going in that 4th month, and for you to finally see hard work pay off. I think that like you said, you can't really describe that feeling, but I can envision it in just some of the other like things that I've set my mind to, and just fully see your fruition of like everything that you've worked on. Same. I mean, I don't know where this channel is going to take me, but I'm also setting myself a 6-month timeline for myself to just reevaluate. All right, I'm putting in all my efforts into storytelling and putting all this content out here on YouTube. And then on tip of graduation in December, I'm reevaluating as to how it's gone. Do I keep going? Or maybe pivoting and adapting the strategy or the approach that I have. So kudos to you to kind of figuring that out, and then really just running through with some of that gut instinct that you had. You kind of alluded to.
And for you, if those 6 months pass and you're kind of like, do a 7th month.
Do it. Okay, do a 7th month. Okay, we will reevaluate early 2024, inshallah then. You kind of spoke generally about bits of difficulty or just challenges. But I would love to hear more in terms of just like what has been the most difficult thing about running a business, your business specifically, and maybe like what are some like talking about that you've done to like overcome it, if you've thought about just like that difficult challenge that's come your way.
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest challenge is me, is me getting in my own way. And it's hard because your brain will do everything in its power to convince you that you're right, if that's for good or for bad. And so when you tell yourself that you're not good enough, your brain tells you that you're right, that you're not good enough. And vice versa. If you're like, yeah, I am a small business owner, I do run this show all by myself, your brain is like, that's right, girl. Yes, you are. And continue doing what you're doing. And so I think the biggest difficulty, as cheesy as it sounds, is me getting in my own way, and fear and being scared. And notice that all of those things are feelings that I came up with by myself. No one is telling me to be fearful. No one is whispering things in my ears being like, it's all coming from me. And so I think like any time that I'm feeling doubtful, I have to ask myself why. And most of the time it stems from a place of comparison, or just not feeling, sometimes it comes from a place of not feeling passionate in that moment. And I think I started Halaballoo as a creative outlet. And even though I was in school, I started it at that time because I wasn't feeling like I had a space to be creative. And I wanted to just start it with no expectations. And here it is now, my full-time job. But I think the common denominator that I have found is that creativity and my passion and love for being creative in any capacity is what has pulled me through. And so anytime that I'm feeling fearful or doubtful or like, I don't want to do this anymore. And anytime you randomly catch me job searching, because it happens every once in a while, I'm on Indeed or like job hunts looking for a job. And then like Kareem, my husband, will look over my shoulder and be like, I know where this is coming from. And he's like, you're not actually wanting another job. You are just not feeling creative. And that's so true. I, every once in a while, go through these ruts. A couple weeks ago, I was going through one too, where I was like, do I want to be a teacher? Like, I was like, do I want to, like, where did that come from? And sure, that comes from a place of actually being curious about what it would be like to be a teacher or a journalist or, other career paths. But usually I have found that those thoughts come from a place of me not feeling creative anymore and needing to pull from that. And so when I feel like that, I go on more walks, or I, draw things with no expectations, or I work on new designs that I never post about or I never monetize. And I have learned ways to kind of reinstill that creativity and passion and excitement. But it's always, it's always fighting with your own self and figuring out how to overcome that.
Gosh, I mean, I appreciate just like the raw take on finding out how to balance that creativity, or at least get through like creative burnout or fatigue. And then just like pushing through regardless, because at the end of the day, like, you know, you're passionate and you recognize that you just need to remind yourself of that passion, of why you enjoy doing what you do. And that's awesome. I mean, so we kind of talked about just, you know, making your passion project full time. I love to jump into this next talking point or category of that fight between artists and being a creative at heart, but also, I mean, this is a full-time job. You are ideally monetizing your skill sets. You are working towards gaining an income so you can sustain a lifestyle that you're trying to aim for. What is that process of finding this creative outlet that you've identified as a brand? How do you generate unique content that you love so much, that you're passionate about, amongst what's trending or what's cool or what people are buying currently?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the fight between monetization and creativity is such a real one. As an artist who is full-time or just sells their work on the side, it doesn't matter. I think monetization, or when your mindset is too much into business mode, you lose creativity. And so they go hand in hand, like you need both sides equally. But I've noticed for me, when I get too much in the monetization mode, I am not creative enough, because I am just thinking about, what does every single person in the entire universe want me to make? That is not a realistic question. You will never make something that everybody loves. And I constantly have to remind myself of that I am not here to please everyone. I'm not a fast fashion brand that can just pull out trends, you know, and that's a whole nother thing. But I am at heart and first and foremost a creative and an artist. And I need to remind myself of that, because that's the only way that monetization and the financial part of it can come out successfully and continuously, and, you know, on a consistent path. So I think that's a huge part of it. And like quite recently, honestly, a couple weeks ago, what I was talking about is I was very much in the mindset of like, okay, what's our next campaign? How are we going to, you know, bring in sales? How are we going to meet our quota? And those are all very, very valid questions. And as a business owner, you do have to ask yourself those questions. But the answers are what are telling to me of where I'm at creatively. And so when a couple weeks ago, my answers to those questions to myself were like, oh, let's bring back the most popular design and just really push that one forward. Or they seem to like this design from 2 years ago. Let's just hash that out and continue advertising that. But when I was doing that, I was realizing I'm not excited about what I'm posting about. In fact, I just found myself posting or sharing things that like I, as an artist, wasn't proud of anymore. And I think it's a strange feeling, because at the time that I made those designs, I was really proud of them and I loved them. But as humans, our interests change, you know, and and as a business owner, that is the struggle, is allowing yourself to change and not being fearful. So I think what I caught myself doing is 2-3 years ago, when I first started out, I not mass produced, but I drew up a lot of different designs. And that is when I was feeling super creative. Within those 20, 30 different designs, let's say 5 of them were a hit. Those 5 I held on to so tightly. I was like, okay, great. I'm going to go full time. I'm going to, these are the ones that I'm going to market and push. 2-3 years later now, I'm like, those no longer speak to me. And even though they may speak to others, I realized that I was just catching myself in this rhythm of, am I even an artist? Like, what am I producing if I'm not proud of it? And so all that to say, I finally snapped out of it, like literally last week, when I, for whatever reason, just got this re-excitement for an idea that I had a year ago. And too much time is the thief of good ideas. So I finally acted on it. And this is I won't go into it now because I'll keep you guys on your toes.
Ooh.
But there may be a new era of Hullabaloo coming soon that I'm so excited about. And I feel like
Oh
you
my
can even
gosh.
hear it like in my
Yeah.
voice, just the excitement. And like, I am so ready to see what that brings me.
Do we get do we know a launch date? Like, do we have something to like look forward to?
Ooh, maybe, okay, very generally,
Okay.
let's say fall.
Okay. Okay. All right. We're still in summer. Okay. Fall. We love
Yeah.
fall. Okay. That's exciting. That is
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I think, yeah, between the fight of creativity and monetization, I think for me, I have learned that to be sustainable and to continue as a small business owner and to have the passion for it and to do it for the right reasons, I always have to continue feeling creative, and not feeling like I need to please everyone. And that's not to say my designs are not offensive by any means. That's not to say that I'm producing bad work, but I think when you're stuck in a world of trends going by so quickly, like the trend cycle is so quick, it always feels like you're running after a trend that is not realistic for you. And that doesn't feel real to you. So my point in saying that is I feel like to be successful as a business owner and as a creative, make stuff that you're excited about. And the people who love that will love that. And the people who don't, they'll go somewhere else. Like you're not here to be the next Zara or Forever 21. Like don't even try and compare that. Like that's so different. You are just creating art, and find what excites you, and don't be scared to try the next thing,
Mm-hmm. I love that. And then, so generally, like in terms of finding that balance, like through it all, like what is important to you? Like, how do you stay authentic in the work that you do, or as you build out your brand, as you go about your day to day? I mean, how are you staying authentic in everything that you commit to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think again, like going off of the trend thing, I try not to chase the trends, or I try not to jump on the bandwagons, even though that might be what brings in the most, business. I try not to do that, because I found that if I try and run after trends, I am always going to be behind. I am always going to be trying to chase after it, as opposed to if you are just you and you just put out work that you are excited about, there's no one to chase. There's no one to run after, and no one's running after you either, because you're producing authentic work that's you. So I think I get a lot of my inspiration by ironically not allowing myself to look at Pinterest boards or to look at other small businesses, because I have found that like a lot of times I'll be sitting down and I'm like, okay, cool. What's my next, collection? What is my next theme? And in the beginning years, I would pull up Pinterest, or I would pull up other small businesses that I looked up to, and I'd love all of these ideas. But then what I found is when I would sit down to actually put the collection together or sit down and draw, my brain would only be able to think of what other people did. And then I would literally catch myself thinking, shoot, well, all the good ideas are taken. I can't do that. Like with me, I think it's a mindset thing with me specifically. Let's say I'm trying to draw, this is such a simple example, but like, let's say I'm trying to draw a sunset. I don't know, like even unrelated to business. Let's say I'm trying to draw a sunset. I have found that if I look up on Pinterest or whatever for examples of sunset drawings, that is what's in my head. And I cannot think of anything else new or fresh. So I do not allow myself, when I'm ready to produce a new idea, I don't allow myself to look for inspiration from other artists. I allow myself to find inspiration from nature and from music and from how I'm feeling and, poems and books and stuff, but not from other artists. And I think the biggest reason for that is a lot of times you'll look at the work that other small businesses or artists produce and you'll think, wow, they're so good. Or like, wow, that is such a good, beautiful idea. But what you don't see is the countless sketches, drafts, crumpled up papers, erasings that were made before you got to that final idea. And so a lot of times I would see that idea and I'd be like, wow, they're so much better than me. Or like, wow, like they really got it figured out. Like they did this. No, that's like a perfectly fledged out idea that took months to produce. And they probably had doubts as well. So I never allow myself, or I try not to compare myself to that, because the perfect drawing or the perfect art piece or hoodie or sweatshirt online never ever shows the behind the scenes of how to get to that idea. So it kind of like, yeah.
That makes so much sense. And I love that creative process. I will have to like borrow it. Like, I think generally when I'm in a creative rut as well, it's like, how do I get re-inspired? And oftentimes I do find myself like looking online or checking out, in my case, like, what are other YouTubers doing? And it's like, but I'm not trying to be other people, right? And that's what the hardest thing of coming back on YouTube. I already explained this in my relaunch video, but I got so caught up in the numbers or just putting out content that I thought worked or that I thought people would click on. And I lost the passion and I lost the ability to really recognize the intentionality of what I was doing or the sincerity about putting out content. And I just thought like, let me go AWOL. I think that's like, and that was it felt easier going offline, like off YouTube, than it was figuring out and asking myself those tough questions about what does YouTube mean to you? Like, what content do you actually want to put out there? What do you like and what are you passionate about? So I love that you've been able to really recognize how to re-energize some of that creative processes that you have, and recognizing that this is an outlet for yourself, for you to put out stuff that you love and that you're passionate about. So thank you for sharing that. And then generally when we talk about balance, when we talk about boundaries, we spoke about this a little bit because we chatted earlier, that concept of startup energy versus like a traditional 9 to 5, right? Finding healthy balance in terms of boundaries for yourself. Can you speak a little bit about jumping from what feels like from like a traditional 9 to 5 job to what I've heard in terms of small businesses, startups, whatever you want to call it, if you're an entrepreneur, that mindset of needing to work 24/7.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that, you hear this, that's what you're alluding to, is like that statement of, oh, I quit my 9 to 5 job so that I could work 24/7. Like, I think there's a lot of glorification and romanticizing that goes along with having a small business. And it's even in like the American dream, right? Like, start your own business, be your own boss. Like, I feel like that is what society has deemed as ideal, or like the dream position to be in. And reality is, it depends on who you are, if that's your dream or not. And so I think the biggest thing that comes hand in hand with that is creating boundaries. And usually you hear the term boundaries of setting boundaries, not between you, but with other people, right? So putting boundaries with friends or, your parents or family. But I feel like more commonly with a small business, I've found that creating boundaries with yourself is what's going to allow you to continue doing what you're doing at a reasonable pace. So on my to-do list every single morning, I made a little timesheet for me to clock in and to clock out. And I don't always listen to it, but I do that to kind of help replicate a typical job where I am like, okay, it doesn't matter what time I clock in. Sometimes it's 9:30 and more commonly it's like 11, and that's fine, So I clock in and I clock out. That is my way of creating a boundary with myself, because it is so much easier to get pulled into something. And I think that's something I really, really struggled with in the beginning, is I would clock out after a full 9-10 hours of work in that day. And then at 11 p.m., a client would message me, just a response about a design that I had sent earlier, and they're finally getting back to me. And I would instantly be pulled back in. And in my head, I would tell myself, oh, if I do not make myself accessible to them right now, if I do not respond right now, I am losing out on an order. I'm losing out on a customer. Truth is, no. Like, who told you that? I told myself that. So I think that's a big one. It's very hard, though, I will say, to fully clock out, to truly feel like you are done, because, I try and give myself weekends off, for example, but the second that I get a DM business related, or I see an email, or even if an order comes in, my brain is immediately snatched back into business mode. And I'm already thinking like, okay, what is my response going to be? What is my fulfillment time for this? How am I going to, finish this order, whatever it is. And so my brain is constantly, you're almost always working. But there's pros and cons to everything. And I think that's kind of like the caveat to it. Yeah. It's honestly really hard. And I'm still learning. I think it's just a matter of like finding what works best for you, and what your brain responds best to. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I mean, you talk about generally like work-life balance, which I think honestly, in the past recent years is such a huge forefront discussion when it comes to just maintaining good boundaries for yourself in terms of that work environment, because the grind can feel really real sometimes. And especially when you're starting off, it really gets murky in terms of advocating for yourself if you need that break. And so, dude, you're ahead of the game in terms of ensuring that you're not allowing yourself to completely fatigue, because we'll get to this in a second. Career burnout is real. We spoke about creative burnout, but generally the grind of keeping going in your career journey is such a huge thing too. Before we get to that, I love to talk to you about social balance, as well as a I guess subcategory of just balance in general of boundaries for yourself. How do you stay like sociable, right? Or I guess sane is a crazy word, but like if you are your own boss, you sometimes are doing siloed work. Like you're working, the grind feels solo, it's isolated. So how do you find social balance and social fulfillment as well when you're on your job or you're doing your day to day?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is something that's not talked about enough, because I think the majority of people out there are working with other people. And reality is, majority of people who are working with other people are actually complaining about the opposite thing, right? They're saying, oh, my coworker sucks, or like my coworkers are so annoying, or I don't want to work with this manager, stuff like that. But so in the beginning, when I first went full time, I was like, sweet, this is great. Nobody annoys me except for myself sometimes. Like, I can do whatever I want. Like, I don't have to have, these mundane conversations with people, water cooler talk, whatever it is. But truth is, as humans, we need connection. It doesn't matter what kind. And I recently have found myself feeling like I actually do miss coworkers, and I'm not yet at the stage where I can hire people yet or have a huge team. As of now, it's still just me, and I don't know what that's going to look like later. So I realized that I can't rely on these little, coworkers or managers or customers on a daily job to fill that part of my cup. So this is a very recent realization. So this is like the first time that it's actually being spoken about. So you guys get, the first scoop about it. But what I recently found that I was feeling for the longest time, I was like, why am I not feeling socially fulfilled? And I was getting upset with myself because I was like, I have a really beautiful, good group of core friends. I have a good relationship with my family. I have a loving husband. Like, I was like, what's happening? Like, these are all really deep connections that I have with people. And I was like, these are what people are complaining that they don't have. So I'm like, what's happening? Like, why am I still feeling like there's a part of me missing? And it wasn't until like 2 weeks ago, again, very recent, like all of this is to say that like, I'm still constantly learning and there's still so much to grow from. But it wasn't until 2 weeks ago that I realized that is not the issue. Here I was thinking that I needed more friends, or I needed, tighter connections with these besties. And truth is, what I realized I was missing out on, and when it finally clicked for me, is I'm actually missing the tiny mundane connections with anybody, which is so interesting because I have never heard anyone else say that. And so I never truly allowed myself to feel that. But what I realize now is I do not have coworkers to have those casual, otherwise known as, annoying conversations on like, how was your weekend? What'd you do? How's your dog doing? I don't know, whatever, stuff like that. And what I was realizing is I have all these deep connections, but as humans, sometimes deep is too deep. Sometimes deep is too much. And sometimes you just want surface level, which is so funny, like, because sometimes we have too much of that. But I have found myself, because I work from home, the only social interactions that I would have were deep ones. So I was kind of missing out on the little things. And so the way that once I finally was able to identify that and actually realize that there's nothing wrong with me, was by going to things more consistently and pushing myself out of my comfort zone in different ways that are not work related. So enrolling in a ceramics class or going to a coffee shop once a week, like that was a huge one for me. Is I realized when I'm working Monday through Friday in my, studio space on my own, I mean, it's a great environment and I'm so lucky and grateful to have this space and to be able to do this. But I now start going to coffee shops once a week to have those random small conversations with the barista, and they're not going to be deep, right? But that is my point. Like, when I realized that's my point, is like, I just needed to, have a small conversation, talk to the mailman, have the smallest conversation with someone at the cashier, or I don't know. So I think finding a social balance comes down to realizing what you are missing from your cup and learning how to fill it, and not getting down on yourself about it, because humans need connection and we need a good amount of those deep connections. And those are so solid, but we also need the small ones to carry us through the rest of the month.
Yeah. Yeah. You were speaking to something that like really resonates with me, because this is the first summer where I was remote working completely. It was an internship that I was doing completely online, and it was so tough. I think that was like the hardest thing to overcome. And I was like, why am I not, I mean, it wasn't the right industry, I suppose, for myself, but I was like, why am I not feeling like this work matters? And a huge part of that was I recognized as soon as I went to the office in person just a few days ago for my final presentation, it was just like being in an office space, meeting my manager, meeting the interns in person, establishing immediately some sense of connectability, like social fulfillment in the grind. Because when you are in the crux of just doing whatever it is in terms of your business tasks, I know that I thrive off of social work. You don't need to be talking to me 24/7, but I know that you're there and we're doing our thing, but I can turn to you and say like, you want to go grab a drink, like, let's go to the break room, or like whatever that little interaction looks like. It's the biggest difference. So I like 100% like agree with those sentiments that you just shared. And I'm glad that like you recognize that. It takes people longer to kind of figure out what work like drive looks like for them. Some people are really good about just locking in, doing their own thing in their office, and others don't. And you just need to, like you said, figure out what that social cup looks like for you, but then be proactive about filling it, or deep, if it's too much, pouring a little bit of it out, and then finding that nice middle ground of everything. This last question about generally the topic of boundaries and balances is really going to maybe be a tougher one, but generally career burnout. Have you felt it? What has that looked like for you? And also, how have you pushed through perhaps a setback and the challenges of facing burnout and fatigue?
Yeah, it's definitely a tough one. And I feel like there's no real cure ever, because we're always gonna be thinking and overworking ourselves and stuff. But for me, career burnout can be avoided by preventative measures and not waiting too late. So a lot of times, like, I feel like I'll only register that I had burnout when, you know, I'm not feeling creative, or like when it's too late and then you are so far deep and it's so hard to get out of it, versus sometimes, like, okay, burnout, I feel like hides itself in very discreet ways. And for me, that manifests in a way that is so misleading. So for example, I can tell, I have now learned that I am on the cusp of burnout when I have a really great week, which sounds counterintuitive, but basically what I have found is if I have a week that I am so on top of it, I have no missed messages, all of my orders are filled, I am pumping out design after design, I am on a roll, I'm doing great. And like, I keep wanting to do more. I'm like, okay, this is great. Let's keep feeding into this fire. You know, let's add fuel to the fire. Let's continue doing this. I have to take a step back because I know that if I continue doing that next week, I'm going to be burnt out, and maybe in a small way, but I'm going to be like, I'm either going to be like, oh, I don't need to do this that much because I did all of it last week. Last week made up for this week. No, that's not how that works, you know? Or truthfully, I just truly feel done. Like, I'm like, oh my God, last week was crazy. And sometimes this doesn't happen in the form of weeks. Sometimes it's day to day, right? So like, this is just to say that if I have a day that's too good, and there's balance with it, you know, that's easier to say than done, but like easier said than done. But if I have a day that I'm like, great, it's 2 a.m., let's pump out more orders, let's keep doing this, I have to stop myself. And I'm like, whoa. You know that means tomorrow you're not going to feel like doing it because you overworked yourself today. So I think a lot of burnout can be prevented by catching yourself sooner rather than later, not pushing yourself, and catching little mannerisms and just figuring out who you are and how you react to things. So on one hand, sometimes I can tell that I'm about to reach burnout if I'm too on top of it, which is, it's hard to see because a lot of times you'll just convince yourself that, no, I'm a boss lady. I'm doing what I'm doing, you know. Other times I'll catch that I'm on the cusp of burnout if I'm starting to get irritated, or if like little tasks are starting to feel crazy overwhelming to me. So like if I get an email, sometimes when I feel irritated, I'm like, okay, take a step back. Like it's gonna happen. So let's take a deep breath. Let's remind ourselves why we love doing what we're doing. So just realizing like little triggers for you and figuring out how to avoid that before it kind of blows up into something bigger.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, getting ahead of that is something that can be a game changer in the day-to-day of just continuously working on something that is hopefully full time. Like, you don't know where this is, like, it's so crazy to think about the future of Halaballoo, but for a future to happen, you still need to keep going. And how do you keep going? You figure out when you need a break, or when that grind is feeling like it's coming to a full stop. You got to just adjust and just push through.
Exactly.
So we are kind of wrapping up here. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. I have a little fun question that I'm going to ask every guest near the end of the podcast, but I would love to kind of just, if you're comfortable sharing your wins. I mean, have there been exciting things for Halaballoo? What are some wins that we, the audience, people listening, can celebrate with you? And you already kind of alluded to something dropping in fall. So we'll all make sure to look at what's being dropped. But just curious, I mean, what are some wins? What's been the most exciting thing, or anything of that sort?
Yeah, absolutely. You're so right. A lot of times you have to like pat yourself on the back and remind yourself of like how far you came. So a couple wins, I would say one of the biggest exciting things for me was being invited by TikTok headquarters to do an employee event for them, and a live embroidery event for them. So that was the first time that I brought my embroidery machine, and I have 2 massive embroidery machines. They look like monsters. They're crazy. And I did a live embroidery event for an employee group at TikTok headquarters. So that was a huge one. Like that was definitely a full circle moment too, because wow, okay, even this podcast is full circle. Like the hoodie design that you're wearing right now went viral and on TikTok. And then 2 years later, TikTok invited me back. And so that was a big win. And then right after that, Lululemon also invited me over to have a live embroidery event with them as well. So that was big. And just, word of mouth is always so exciting. Like seeing where that pulls you. So those two were really exciting. And then also just kind of on a more creative level too, artist collaborations are so fun for me. And actually the piece I'm wearing right now is part of a collaboration with another artist through her small business called Bed Collective in Chicago. And that is like, I feel like the beauty of doing what we're doing in this day and age is we have never met in person, and she is, in a completely different state, but we produced an entire collection that we're proud of. So I think that's another win, is growing as an artist, meeting other artists and creatives, and creating things that are just so cool and that we're so excited about all together. So yeah.
I love that. Yay for wins. I know like this episode kind of walked through, everything. Halaballoo, the good, the bad, how you got to where you are today, and then navigating challenges, whether it was career burnout, creative fatigue, making sure you're authentic in the content that you're putting out there amongst all the trends. And so here's to you, here's to Halaballoo, all of your wins, and inshallah, just the beginning. We will be celebrating and cheering you on for so many more wins in the future, inshallah. To close us off in today's coffee chat conversation, and I'm sorry, you were talking so much, I don't even know if you got through your matcha, but we appreciate you for chatting through everything. One last question before we say our goodbyes. What is a lesson learned that you know now that you wish you could have told your younger self? And this can be across the board, career, personal, professional development, whatever it might be. What is anything that's resonated with you thus far that you really wish younger Hala knew?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing is trust the signs and the ideas that were given to you. Like those aren't just random thoughts that you have. Those could be meant to grow into something new. And so if you have an idea of that, like think of that as a sign, like whether it's religiously or spiritually or whatever it is, like that's your reason that thought was placed in your head, not that person's head, not your friend's head, not your teacher's head, in your head for a reason. And maybe it was because you specifically are equipped with the skills, the passion, the interest, the drive to be able to manifest it into something bigger. And I think the other main thing I would say too is, little Hala, if you are listening out there, like you were always meant to be an artist. And I think growing up, I was always told that when you grow up, you're going to be an artist. But in my head, I didn't know what that meant. And I always just envisioned little Hala in front of like an art easel painting. And I thought, how is that going to make money? But I realized that you were always meant to be an artist, but there's not only one way to be an artist. So even if I go back to journalism, there is an art form in writing. If I'm a full-time small business owner, I can be an artist that way. Like, I think always just remembering that you have that gift and that interest and passion in being creative and in art, and being an artist is not just one thing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for giving. I don't even know. I don't have a timer going on, but this conversation was absolutely magical. I am so glad I was able to chat with you on the first ever episode of Coffee Chats with Aisha. Here's to many more, inshallah, maybe follow-ups or secondary conversations. Keep us all posted. I'm dropping everything regarding Halaballoo down in the description. So please check her out. Order it. Keep tabs on that fall drop, inshallah. And I'm really glad, Hala, thank you so much for coming through, hopping on virtually. I appreciate it. I'm sure people who are listening appreciate it. And I wish you absolutely the best in every sort of endeavor that you get into, and I'm excited to keep in touch. And I'm sure everyone else who is now connected down in socials or even on your company are also so excited to keep up with you as well. So thank you so much. And inshallah, I mean, I'll be texting you right after this. And I really appreciate you jumping on here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was so great chatting with you. I'm so honored to be the first guest and to be able to chat with you. This was so much fun. And I gained something from it too. So thank you.
Thank you so much for watching or listening to this new podcast series called Coffee Chats with Aisha. It'll drop every other Tuesday, and I'll be talking to different Muslim women professionals in all various industries. Keep coming through, keep hitting that like button, subscribe, turn on your push notifications to be notified every time a new episode drops. But I hope you loved today's first ever episode, and I hope you'll tune in next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.